Today on Cinema and Cocktails, two boys go for a joyride in the thriller Cop Car starring Kevin Bacon. A family picks up and moves from Brooklyn all the way to Washington State and deals with a few issues in little boxes. And John Boyega portrays a young man trying his best to stay out of prison in the film Imperial Dreams. All three movies can be found on Netflix, so let's watch them, mix them, and drink them. How many of you out there, the wonderful, faithful listeners of this show, have actually gone on a joyride? Like straight up, like you've seen a car running in the street and you've decided, I think I'm going to jump in and take off and drive around for a few hours and then bring the car back. I've always wondered what goes through the mindset of a joyrider. Like, I get it if you're a carjacker, because, obviously as a carjacker, you're trying to take the car and trying to make some money off of it, right? But if you're just a joyrider, like what do you take it and go out and like commit crimes? Do you go out and pick your girlfriend up or your boyfriend up and take them for a nice ride? Like, what is I don't know what the purpose is of the joyride. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that is the premise of our first film today. It's a small town sheriff sets out to find two kids who have taken his cop car for a joy ride. And that's essentially it. Now, who stars in this movie? Oh, the incomparable Kevin Bacon. I mean, man, one of the industry's greatest character actors. It's his resume is so vast. It's almost to the point where it's not like what you haven't seen him in. It's like which character did you like him the most as? I mean, he's got 95 credits to his name, but I mean, they span from Guiding Light to Footloose to She's Having a Baby to Tremors to Mystic River to A Few Good Men, JFK, Flatliners, Apollo 13, Sleepers, Wild Things, Frost Nixon. He was even in the X-Men First Class, Hollow Man. I mean, it's just, and what's cool about it is that in some roles, right, he plays like, a major characters, but in others, he just kind of pops up for like a split second. And then what do you say? Oh my God, Kevin Bacon. Like in Crazy Stupid Love, where he's not like all over the movie. He just shows up and he's, bam. You're like, oh my God, Kevin Bacon. It's just so cool whenever you see him. So when I saw that he was the lead guy in this one, I was like, well, I got to take a look now, because I was curious to see what he was going to do in this one. And as usual, he created a memorable character. The other actors in this, James Freedon Jackson, is a child actor. Well, I won't say a child, kind of like a tweener. He and Hayes Welford are both kind of tweeners. They roughly have about 17 credits between them. James has been seen on Jessica Jones and The Blacklist, and Hayes he's appeared in Independence Day and a few other places. So, not too much for these guys. Now, there are some other character actors who've had some major roles in other films, or, they've appeared in a lot of stuff. One of them is Cameron Manheim, and she's been in 103 credits. As soon as you see her, you'll instantly recognize her. I'm not going to go through her resume. And the other guy is Shea Wiggum, whose character name simply is The Man, believe it or not. It's just The Man. But this is another fantastic character guy who's popped up in a lot of different movies. He was in The Joker. He was in Fargo. He was in Boardwalk Empire. He was in The Wolf of Wall Street. So in The Wolf of Wall Street, if you haven't seen the movie, he was the captain of the boat when Leonardo DiCaprio went to him and was asking him, are we going to be able to make it? And he was like, yeah, we'll make it, but there's going to be a little bit of chop. So, I mean, he's also, again, kind of in that same Kevin Bacon role where he doesn't do a lot of major stuff, but whenever he shows up, man, he's unforgettable. So let's take a look at some of these characters. Sheriff Kretzer. Hard to get a read on this guy. I mean, he starts off real smooth and in control, and you get a sense that he knows how to handle himself in tough situations, because throughout the entirety of the film, he never really loses his cool. But this situation regarding these two boys, it seems to be the first time where he's in a situation where he doesn't really have total control of everything. And it's actually kind of funny watching his patience unravel through the course of the movie as he tries to diffuse this strange situation. Now, the two boys, Travis and Harrison. Travis initially is excited and aggressive in the beginning. Like, he's the kid that's kind of edging it on, like, yo, let's get in the cop car. Let's take off. Let's go here. Let's go there. He's really this thrill seeker kind of guy. But as the film, moves forward, he kind of, his fearlessness kind of shifts a little bit. On the flip side of that, Harrison starts off, I won't say a mama's boy, but you can definitely tell he's a little bit more withdrawn. And again, similar to Travis, they kind of, their personalities kind of flip-flop, because as the movie goes further along, Harrison begins to find his inner strength towards the end of the movie. So it's a very interesting juxtaposition of characters between both of the two boys. Now, as far as the dialogue, these are country folk. The only question is, where are they located? I can't, when you look at the scenery of the movie, I want to believe it's like the Midwest, like Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, because it looks very, very flat where they're at. But I mean, it could be anywhere where there's a lot of, vast flatlands. But for the most part, these are country folk. I mean, they say what they mean and they mean what they say. There's no hiding behind the dialogue. The speech and the conversation seems to be very, very real. As a matter of fact, like in the beginning of the movie, the two kids are like just walking around, just like shooting out curse words, which I thought was kind of cute because, I mean, I don't know about teenage girls, but that's what teenage boys do. They practice their cursing. So they're just like, shooting off these different expletives. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. And to me, that as that kind of dialogue for teenage boys, I thought it really, really rang true. Now, what exactly is this story about? Well, there's multiple conflicts all throughout this. And so we're going to kind of break them down. I'd say there's three main conflicts in this one. The first one is Kretzer and the boys. Okay. Sheriff Kretzer versus the two boys. They have taken his cop car and he wants it back. Can't get any more simple than that. That's what the movie's about. But when you start delving into some of the other issues that go on, there's something going on with Kretzer. And he has some interesting, how can I say this? Some interesting goings on in the town that have caused him to make some decisions and do a few things that I don't know if he regrets it, but man, he's like, oh my goodness, I've done something wrong here. I got to cover this up and clean that up. I don't want to get too much into what exactly the kind of police officer he is, but I think you kind of get the idea. And now he has got to fight his way out of it. And on top of him trying to get through the situation, he's trying to get his car back and keep his tracks covered. So it kind of, ratchets up the difficulty level of him trying to keep a low profile. Then there's Kretzer versus the man. Now, not the man that you think I'm talking about, like the man. I'm talking about Kretzer versus the man. Like I said, that was the name of the character in the breakdown. Kretzer versus the man. Whatever happened between these two individuals, you'll find out when the movie begins, or about midway through it, or towards the end, or wherever the man appears. I'm not going to tell you any more than that. It's got to be resolved. It ain't going to go much further than that. Now, as far as the plot goes, I kind of thought that this could have been like a journey movie where the boys kind of go on a joyride and discover the true depths of their friendship. But I don't know. For me, the plot type of this one was more kind of like a why done it or what done it, because, there's it's constantly. I'm like, when you see it come on, I'm constantly asking myself as the movie goes further and further along. Mind you, I'm enjoying myself greatly, but I'm just like, why is all this happening? Like, what was it that set all these circumstances into motion? Who is the man? Where did he come from? Why is the sheriff in the situation that he's in? I mean, and is he really willing to do anything to get out of it? The only thing that we're sure of is the two boys taking the car. Everything else is a big mystery. So as you watch it, it's up to you as the viewer to kind of piece together things and figure it out on your own, which I think is kind of cool. Thematically, there's definitely an innocent lost. Okay, these boys were out here trying to have some country fun, joyriding, but found themselves in a real mess of a situation with this sheriff and how he does his policing, and now they have to grow up real quick. Okay, so that to me is where, you know, the innocence lost thing is, because they get exposed to some things that kids really should not be exposed to. You could also kind of put this under the category of like true friendship. I mean, you can tell that these boys mean a lot to each other. You know, and you get a sense that as they tease each other throughout the movie, that their relationship goes, I want to say back over the years, but I mean, heck, they look like they're only about 12 years old. But you can definitely tell that they care for each other. They live near one another. Their families obviously know each other's families. So that's the kind of sense of camaraderie that I kind of got from it. Now, this movie doesn't take a long time to get into, so because it's a tight 88 minutes. Okay, so when you talk about the structure of the movie, man, in the first act, the boys pretty much steal the car. In the second act, you learn about the sheriff, and the man is discovered. About midway through the second act, when you start getting to pinch points and conflicts and other types of crises, the man kind of makes things a little bit complicated. And then at the third act, the sheriff tries everything he can to get his car back. Now, this movie was written by John Watts and Christopher Ford, and Watts was the one who basically directed it. Watts has done a few other projects like the Onion News Network. He's been on Spider-Man Far From Home, and he was also involved in Spider-Man Homecoming. So he's kind of really good at kind of creating really good action sequences within films. Now, what Watts does a great job of this is really kind of capturing the innocence of the boys and the frenetic nature of the sheriff. I mean, it's great how he kind of shows the two contrasting sides of these individuals. Most of the film is shot outdoors, and the camera angles from different perspectives makes for really, really good theater. The visual narrative of the flat country really gives you like this sense of desperation that there's no help out there, and that the sheriff kind of controls all that he surveys. It really kind of gives you this desolate nature and the possibility that this could happen because of the location. I know when I was watching it, the first thing I'm thinking to myself is, you know, how long are these two boys going to roll around in their car, and is somebody eventually going to see them? But when you see where they're located at, you're like, okay, this could possibly happen. What Watts also does a good job is the way he directs the film. It kind of pulls at all of your emotions, the desperation, the hope, the anger. It also evokes, when you start looking at things, how could somebody be so evil, you know, when it comes to certain characters in the movie. And then he tops it all off with the way it ends, with you as the viewer trying to figure out, how does this thing end? So, I mean, it's really, really well done, I think. And that's just my personal opinion about it. Now, what worked is the tension throughout the movie as the film builds to its really big time dramatic conclusion. What didn't work is, again, how did all this happen? 88 minutes, I would have given anything to get even 6 more minutes, just to kind of give us a little bit of a backdrop to the man and the sheriff and how these things all kind of came about. It is rated R because of some on-screen deaths. And as far as my quote-unquote Aristotle index, there's a few unconvincing possibilities. I mean, besides the ideas of teenagers driving a cop car around at high rates of speed, I mean, you know, you can kind of watch and kind of get an idea about that. And there's also the possibility that if a cop car was really stolen, you know, by a couple of boys, you know, would it really be this difficult to get it back? But, you know, Bacon does a good job with some of these plot holes and how things kind of play themselves out. So it's easy to kind of just watch back and sit back, and he's kind of not watch back. It's easy to kind of sit back and watch and be entertained. IMDb gave it a 6.3, which is a very, very solid rating. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a very, very strong 87, but the audience only gave it a 53. And again, I have to think that's because of some of the plausible things that did occur throughout the movie. For the Cinema and Cocktails rating, I would have to give it a 3.5. I kind of want to give it a 4, but not all the way. Cop Car doesn't do a lot when it talks about, you know, developing the characters, okay, which kind of hurts the film a little bit, I think. And I thought so much exposition of who these people are. I mean, I think there was a lot more that could have been told, but regardless of that, Chris Ford's storytelling really keeps you guessing as to what's going to happen next. Now, yeah, the conclusion is potentially obvious, but it's still a great story. And to me, it's kind of like one of those fish stories that your grandpa told you when you were a kid or your uncle told you when you were a kid.